Good morning, Chair Vollendroff, members Garrett and Holmes, staff and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Thank you so much, Deb. Good morning, everyone. I will now convene the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for Wednesday, May 7th. Before we get the meeting started, I did want to acknowledge one piece of written communication to the board related to shipment of cannabis / Washington State that will be attached to the minutes of this meeting when we're posted. So with that, I will turn the meeting over to, well, let's see, is Kevin here? Let's see. Is Kevin on?
Here.
There he is. He's in the room. All right, Kevin. So welcome. Kevin, I don't know. I know at least for me, this is your first time presenting a board meeting that I've presided over. Maybe you've been at one before, but welcome. Regardless, I will turn it over to you. You're going to give us a rulemaking timelines regarding all industries this morning. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Vollendroff, board members Garrett and Holmes. I will be providing a rules update for May 2025. It will be largely the same as what I provided during caucus yesterday with a few minor updates. So this month we have the lab accreditation rule taking effect on May 23rd, which means that project has come to completion. And we are now down to 4 current rules projects with a 5th that we'll be asking approval to get started on today. As I mentioned, this is kind of the calm before the storm, however, and I will get to that in a moment. So as far as our current rules, we have the retail alcohol product placement rule. We are actively meeting with various stakeholders to discuss their concerns and are planning to issue an updated draft rule that reflects recent feedback later this month. We also plan to hold a second round of listening sessions to solicit additional feedback on this updated draft before we advance to the official CR 102 proposal phase. Then we have minors on premises. With the supplemental CR 102 having been filed on April 23rd, we are now in the official comment period and will hold a public hearing on June 5th at 10 a.m. And I wanted to note that this will be our first rulemaking public hearing since these have been decoupled from the board meetings. And so while the public hearings will proceed similarly to the way that they have in the past, there are some minor changes. We have a new email address, publichearings@lcb.wa.gov for those who wish to register to speak in advance. And this and other details can be found on our website. And that information was also submitted with the CR 102 that we filed.
Great.
We have the acceptable forms of ID rulemaking project. Work is ongoing based on feedback that we've received on that. We're considering additional stakeholder engagement efforts that will likely be announced later this month. We have the seasonal hours for beer and wine licensees. The CR 101 was just filed in late April and it will be published in the State Register today. Because this is widely supported as a common sense measure to support businesses and there's little to no perceived risk, we anticipate minimal need for extended stakeholder engagement, and we are currently on track to move to the CR 102 phase by late June or July and adopt rules by September.
Great.
So with the legislative session coming to a close, we have several bills that will require rulemaking. These include expanded outdoor alcohol service, or the fan zones that we'll be talking about later today, contract kitchens for liquor licensees, cannabis retail management agreements, cannabis retailer advertising, and various licensing and fee updates. So we are now working to assess specifically which rule sections will need to be opened, repealed, or newly created, and that will inform tentative timelines, interdivisional project teams, and how to best distribute that work among the rulemaking team. And as Justin mentioned yesterday, the concern there is that we can't have a rule section open up for multiple different rulemaking projects at the same time, so we just have to be strategic about that. Of these legislatively driven rulemaking projects, it appears that we may be able to do some of it utilizing expedited rulemaking with the CR 105 process. And we are looking at the feasibility of incorporating or combining these new projects with existing or pending rules projects if and where possible. Later this morning, Daniel will be requesting board approval to get started on the first and likely the most complex of these legislative rulemaking projects, 1515, the World Cup bill. And as discussed yesterday, the law will take effect in late July, but we won't have rules in effect probably until the end of the year. And so that means that there's going to be a gap for a few months where businesses in cities will be permitted certain privileges under the law that we don't have specific rules for. And so we've already heard from some licensees that are expressing a lot of interest and excitement about this. So we in the rules team are coordinating with licensing, enforcement, education, and communications to develop interim guidance for businesses and cities so that they understand what the law does, what it doesn't do, when it takes effect, and when to expect rules. And based on Ollie's suggestion yesterday, we are pursuing the idea of creating a video as well so that we can make sure to reach as many folks as possible.
Great.
And then beyond 1515, CR 101s to implement the remaining 6 bills will need to be filed within the next month to 6 weeks. Moving on to petitions, we received an email last week from a petitioner regarding a petition that was accepted by the board over a year and a half ago, but no progress has been made to date. So we are reviewing our backlog of petitions that have similarly been delayed and plan to file CR 101s for all 5 of those in the next couple of months. That doesn't necessarily mean that those will be prioritized with the legislative work that's going to need to happen. That's going to take precedence, but we did want to get these on the books. Additionally, after this update, I will be presenting a recommendation on behalf of the Director's Office regarding a petition we received from Confidence Analytics, a third-party laboratory, requesting clarification and rules surrounding R&D testing. And this would include more clearly defining related terminology and differentiating what tests must be entered into our traceability system and what is exempt. The concerns highlighted in this petition also closely align with comments that we received by many stakeholders during the comment period for the lab accreditation rule last month. And we signaled at that time that we would be opening up rules to address that issue. And just a few other miscellaneous items. We are continuing to monitor and provide feedback to the Department of Health on their medical cannabis product compliance rulemaking to ensure consistency and alignment with our rules. And they have conveyed that the CR 102 proposal will not likely be ready until September at this point. And then lastly, during our most recent meeting with the folks over at the Washington State Department of Agriculture, who are now responsible for the accreditation of third-party labs, we learned that their funding has been drastically reduced and there is a potential for service delays as a result. So we're keeping in close contact with our counterparts over there to determine if there will be any impacts on our licensees. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions? Seeing no questions. Kevin, if I didn't know better, I'd say you've been doing this for a number of years. Great job. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. And Kevin, it looks like you're going to continue giving us a rules petition review and consideration regarding cannabis testing terminology.
Yes, thank you. So on March 19th, 2025, Stephanie Riley, the General Counsel for Confidence Analytics, a third-party laboratory, submitted a petition for rulemaking to the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board, requesting that the board initiate rulemaking to amend various sections of Chapter 314.55 WAC to accomplish the following. First, to clearly and succinctly define current terms such as quality assurance test results, quality control test results and compliance testing, to create a new definition for, quote, mandatory state compliance testing, to identify all testing that must be entered into the seed to sale tracking system, to differentiate between non-mandatory testing, also known as research and development or R&D testing, and mandatory state compliance testing, and to clarify that non-mandatory testing or R&D testing is not subject to seed to sale tracking requirements. The petitioner asserts that current rule language is not clear and that this ambiguity creates confusion among the regulated community that can result in compliance issues. Further, the petitioner asserts that the recent LCB enforcement and education communications contradict past LCB guidance and communications, as well as the long-standing interpretation of the industry. It is therefore imperative that these terms be clearly defined in order to provide labs, licensees, and other stakeholders with clear direction. So the petitioner references 3 WAC sections that use different terminology for describing required tests. We see quality assurance test results in WAC 314.55.083 subsection 4K. We see quality control test results and compliance testing in WAC 314.55.102.2b and 6C respectively. And we see test results as required in WAC 314.55.109. The term quality assurance test results is also used in several other sections that were not referenced by the petitioner. And there's other related terminology used elsewhere throughout Chapter 314.55 WAC, including quality control testing, required quality control tests, quality assurance tests, and quality control tests. So the issue here is whether the board should accept or deny the petition to initiate the rulemaking process to consider amending sections of Chapter 314.55 WAC to clarify and define cannabis testing terminology and reporting requirements. The LCB has clear statutory authority to address this issue via rulemaking under various RCWs pertaining to definitions, product standards, and product testing and traceability requirements. An exhaustive list of these RCWs, as well as all pertinent WACs identified, has been included with today's meeting materials and will be available on our website. Our analysis concluded that currently there is no definition in statute or regulations for a singular term that describes required testing of cannabis and cannabis products. A few different terms are used in different WAC sections to address compliance testing of cannabis. As the petitioner points out, this has made complying with testing and reporting requirements confusing for some licensees and laboratories. Additionally, licensees indicate that their understanding has been that non-mandatory samples, i.e. samples submitted by individuals or licensees not intended for market, were not required to be reported into the LCB's traceability system as samples destined for retail sale are. Cannabis samples are required to be tracked and to comply with traceability requirements in WAC 314.55.083. LCB enforcement and education staff have identified violations regarding samples and certificates of analysis with testing results not being entered into CCRS. Additionally, the Department of Health currently has a rulemaking open around cannabis testing of medically compliant products to include new requirements for terpene testing and lower, more protective action levels for metals. It will be important to align terminology with the Department of Health amending rules around required testing. So some impacts within the agency have been identified. The Enforcement and Education Division has recently been working with laboratories to clarify cannabis testing and reporting requirements. There is a concern surrounding potentially hazardous products not being identified and possible diversion of samples that exceed limits for pesticides, solvents, and so forth. Education and enforcement have reported observing laboratories with standard operating procedures that allow licensees to review testing results prior to reporting in CCRS. This practice could result in laboratories not reporting failed test results, which may lead to unsafe products entering the retail marketplace. LCB staff have identified failed tests not reported into CCRS, where those failed product lots were mixed with other passing product lots. Public health has similar concerns regarding the possible diversion of samples that don't meet current standards for pesticides and so forth, and that these can present a health hazard for consumers. Concern that non-mandatory or R&D samples subvert the process for identifying possible hazardous products. So we received many comments related to this issue during recent rulemaking to implement second substitute House Bill 2151 related to the transfer of lab accreditation from the LCB to the Washington State Department of Agriculture, which goes into effect on May 24th. Because this petition references WAC sections impacted by this active rulemaking, new rulemaking cannot be initiated until June when the current rule changes are in effect. So our conclusion, based on ongoing discussions with the laboratories and licensees related to cannabis testing requirements, the LCB supports opening the rule development process to clarify language and reporting requirements for mandatory and non-mandatory testing, including internal quality control samples specifically related to product development. The Director's Office recommends that the Board accept the petition to amend sections of 314.55 WAC to clarify and define cannabis testing terminology, reporting requirements. So with that, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions for Kevin this morning?
No questions.
Seeing no questions, Kevin, this makes a lot of sense to me. We've all received a lot of communication about this, so appreciate the work on this. With that, do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation related to this rule petition request?
This is Ollie. I move that we accept.
Second.
So moved. Thank you very much. All right, Kevin, thanks so much. Moving right on to the next agenda item, we'll go into alcohol-related rulemaking, and we are welcoming back Daniel Jacobs, who we haven't seen for a while. Daniel, welcome, and look forward to hearing from you this morning.
Thanks so much, Chair Volendroff, and good morning, Chair Volendroff, members Garrett and Holmes. This morning, I'm here on behalf of the Director's Office to request approval of the CR 101 on implementing second substitute House Bill 1515 on expanded outdoor alcohol service. While this bill 2SHB 1515, or I'm just going to call it 1515 for short, authorizes temporary expansions of outdoor and indoor alcohol service in various ways, and it hasn't, as of right now, been signed yet by Governor Ferguson. All indications are that that will happen in the next days or a few weeks. And since it's a rather complicated bill, we in the Director's Office would like to get a jump start on the rulemaking process as soon as possible. And then just as a disclaimer, a lot of this is going to be a repeat of what I said yesterday. So if approved today, there's going to be a public comment period until June 7th. Following stakeholder engagement, hopefully to occur in July, we plan on filing the CR 102 with proposed rule language during the August board meeting and having the public hearing at the end of September. Between the approval of the CR 102 and the public hearing, the public will have the opportunity to provide written comment on the proposed rule language and to sign up to testify at the public hearing. As Kevin mentioned, just as a reminder, this public hearing will not be during the September board meeting, but we'll be sending out more logistical details on how to attend and how to sign up for that closer to the time. Assuming the public hearing at the end of September doesn't identify any need for substantial changes, we will file final rules during the October board meeting and have these rules in effect hopefully in November. Given that this law technically is currently scheduled to become effective at the end of July, and we're already in May, as Kevin mentioned, we're not going to have final rules in place by the end of July. We're currently in the process of developing guidance and explanatory documents, one-pagers, highlights, and in discussions about creating a video to explain and allow licensees to understand what they can and can't do this summer. And those documents will be published and distributed as soon as they're finalized. So 1515 creates three main expansions of alcohol service, in addition to granting LCB additional rule-making authority to implement these authorizations. The first expansion is what I'm calling expanded outdoor service. And this allows local governments, which it defines as cities, counties, towns, and port authorities, to request approval from the LCB for restaurants, taverns, wineries, breweries, distilleries, and others to share outdoor alcohol service with each other in either a large or a small part of the local jurisdiction, subject to several statutory requirements. As I said, the statute identifies several requirements that have to be satisfied and how the local government has to request approval from the LCB and under what circumstances LCB has to approve those requests. That authorization is currently scheduled to become statutorily available, as I said, at the end of July, and it's scheduled to expire at the end of 2027. The second one is what I call the civic campus expansion. And this allows cities with populations of 220,000 people or more to request approval for allowing expanded outdoor and indoor alcohol service in what the statute defines as a public civic campus. And they're allowed to do this for 25 events a year. And 7 of those events are allowed to be multiple days. This expansion includes the same licensees as the expanded outdoor, such as the restaurants and others I mentioned, but it also allows for caterers and special occasion licensees to participate. And it exempts the special occasion licensees from needing to be sponsored by a nonprofit, as special occasion licenses typically are. It additionally requires the person known or the entity called the campus operator to provide LCB with advance notice of this event. It requires the campus operator to post signs around where the event's going to happen, letting folks know that the event's going to happen. And it requires submission of what's called a joint operating plan. And this joint operating plan itself has more than half a dozen separate requirements that need to be in it, including identifying how the campus operator is going to prevent underage service and overservice, what a limit on the maximum number of drinks allowed per transaction, what the security and staff ratios to customers are going to be, how staff are going to be trained on alcohol service, and detailed schematics of what the perimeter and barriers are going to look like, just to name a few of them. It also gives the LCB authority to create additional requirements for the joint operating plan, and it gives LCB authority to deny these requested events if the campus operator fails to comply with certain of these requirements. Just like the expanded outdoor service, this one's going to become effective end of July and expire at the end of 2027. Now, the third one is what I'm calling the fan zone authorization. And this allows local jurisdictions that are designated as fan zones or host cities by international sports associations to request expanded indoor and outdoor alcohol service for a certain part of their local jurisdiction only during a single multi-day event in either June or July 2026. Now, some people have referred to this bill as the FIFA bill or the World Cup bill or the fan zone bill, and this is the part of that bill that they're talking about, because this is pretty clearly and openly designed to allow fan zones in Seattle and other cities and areas around the state to allow expanded outdoor alcohol service during the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But as I've explained, this bill, while some call it the fan zone or FIFA World Cup bill, it actually does a lot more than that. The fan zone authorization has a lot of the same requirements as the civic campus authorization, including the joint operating plan, advanced posted notice, etc. With some relevant differences. And then obviously this one isn't going to go live in July because this is only going to be available once per fan zone, and they can only do this during either June or July 2026. As you can imagine, this project's going to require a lot of rulemaking. In addition to these 3 new permissions, the law also expands our rulemaking authority to implement this. It provides temporary exemption for some of the rules on caterers and special occasion licensees, allowing them to operate during the civic campus and fan zone events. And as Justin mentioned yesterday, it also gives us fee setting authority to determine how much these local governments and entities, how much we should charge them in order to create these events, in order to authorize these events. Lastly, I also want to mention that this project is going to be co-led by myself and by Kevin Walder, because starting mid-July and through early October, I'm going to be on paternity leave to spend time with my 8-week-old daughter. And the project should be able to continue smoothly through that time. As I mentioned yesterday, I think I've timed this pretty well so that once the rulemaking really starts getting underway, I'm going to go on leave. And then with the timeline in place, ideally, by the time I get back, all the hard work will be done. And then I can just sort of take it over the finish line and slide in for the win. Therefore, on behalf of the Director's Office, I'm hereby requesting approval of the CR 101 on implementing Second Substitute House Bill 1515 on expanded outdoor alcohol service. Thank you. I know that was a lot, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. I don't know if you timed it well or your daughter timed it well. Somebody timed it well. I have one quick question related to the fan zone component of the three main extensions. Are there a limited number of fan zones, or do we have any idea how many fan zones across the state we may be talking about?
Great question. So FIFA or a related association actually sent out an email or a notice identifying 12 fan zones. You can there's a link that I found. I just Googled sort of like Seattle World Cup fan zones, and a lot of the counties have one designated fan zone. And so there's already a finite list of those. I believe there are 12. And so our understanding, and also if you look at our fiscal notes and sort of our budget projections when we analyzed the bill, the assumption was that there are going to be 12 of these fan zones. And because each fan zone has to pick one event, we're anticipating 12 of them.
Okay, so that was my main question, is that the legislation that passed is specific to a finite number of fan zones, it sounds like.
Yes, but that's just for the fan zone authorization.
Right.
The others have different numbers.
Correct. Okay, great. Thank you. Other questions from board members this morning? All right, seeing none, sounds like you all have a lot of work ahead of you, and I think this is great. Having the World Cup component here in Seattle, I think, is an exciting thing for the state of Washington, and we want to create a good fan experience while looking out for public health and safety. So, with the information provided, do I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation for approval of the CR 101 for House Bill 1550, expanded outdoor alcohol service?
I move approval of the CR 102 for expanded alcohol service as discussed today.
Do I have a
Need
second?
a 101.
Oh yeah, 101.
Oh,
Just
so sorry.
Quick amendment.
The 101.
Okay. Do I have a second?
This is Ali. I second.
All right, so moved. Thank you very much, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much.
All right, that concludes our agenda for today. So I'll hereby adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.